Last year, I did a video unboxing my HP EliteBook 6930p, a new old stock laptop that was new old stock. It was still in its original box and still has its original accessories, Windows install, hardware, everything. I didn't really need the computer, but I bought it just for the experience of being able to unbox something that old. I didn't know if I would get the chance to be able to do that again anytime soon, maybe for several years, at least. So, now I get to look back at that video and laugh. This is the Gateway GT5644E that is brand new in the box. Yes, that's right everyone, we're doing this again. This is a bit of a different PC compared to the EliteBook. It's a Windows Vista consumer grade machine from about late 2007. Now it doesn't look that way at first. You can see that the box clearly isn't sealed. For a bit of backstory, my dad found this computer on Facebook Marketplace. I'm not personally active on Marketplace. I don't really like Facebook at all, and honestly, there usually isn't anything worth my time listed in my area. And even after my dad showed me this computer, I didn't really have a ton of interest at first, but it grew on me after thinking about it, and my dad decided to throw the guy an offer to trade some old video game stuff, and he said if I went and picked it up, I could have it. So I'm sure you can imagine how that all went down. For the fun stuff, this machine has an AMD Athlon 64X2 5000 plus CPU, paired with 3GB of dual channel RAM, which I find a bit interesting. Maybe it's two 1GB sticks and two 512s. And this also has an NVIDIA GeForce 8300 GS. So at least this should have a bit of GPU power. It has a 400GB hard drive. I'm getting flashbacks. A DVD-RW drive, as you would expect. It's also got a card reader, some Gateway portable drive thing, and it even comes with speakers in addition to the usual accessories. Fascinating. It may not be a real Gateway, but it's certainly got that vibe going on with the box, which I just love. It's otherwise a pretty boring box, actually, other than listing the specs in multiple places. It's in pretty good shape though, so I'm almost certainly going to hang on to it. This box also has an inventory label on it. I have no idea where this thing came from, and this label doesn't really say much, but I'm sure maybe somebody knows. This thing is dated December of 2007 though, and it would have retailed for $870 when it was new. I'm guessing this thing was picked up from a physical store. It's not like it had a shipping label on it. This was the only thing that was there. As for how the guy I got this thing from ended up with it, he got it from an estate sale, and it was them who opened the box to show him the contents of it. He didn't actually open it any further or do anything with the machine. So it's still sealed. So I think that's about it. It's time to see what a 18-year-old Gateway computer looks like, I guess. It's kind of hard to film this because this box is freaking big, but immediately after opening the box, the first thing on top is this setting up your Gateway computer poster, which covers all of the basics. It's about what you could ask for, really, if you had no idea what you were doing. It even includes plugging the video into the GPU, which is good. And it also shows an illustration of all of the other options that could have been added into one of these Gateway PCs, including an audio card or a TV tuner or wireless. Under that is the keyboard, which is a pretty standard looking rubber dome keyboard, though it's got multimedia keys and has a wrist rest as well. And it's also PS2, which I wasn't really expecting, but I'm assuming this has PS2 ports, so it's fine. Probably was cheaper. Under that, there was this advertisement from Microsoft Office 2007. This has a trial of Home and Student preloaded, but obviously they wanted you to upgrade to a higher end version. There's also everything you need from start to finish. This is a collection of accessories. Certainly a fun thing to look through. There's also a box that contains a couple more accessories, a power cord, the mouse, which is USB, so they have a USB mouse and a PS2 keyboard. Again, it doesn't really matter, but I just found it kind of funny. It also comes with a modem cable, in case you need that, and a bag of goodies. We have the starter guide, not intended to replace the user guide, I don't believe. We also have a document containing the limited 1-year warranty agreement, so if I have any problems with this computer, I can call them up for support. There's also the Gateway End User License Agreement, a card for warranty registration, which I'll be sure to do. There's a document explaining the Windows Update feature in Windows Vista, that was still a new thing at the time, as well as an advertisement for the new AOL. I had the exact same reaction when I pulled this out. Don't worry, they've changed. We also have a product key for the Microsoft Office trial. Not sure why I'm covering it up in this footage, it doesn't really matter. Finally, there is an operating system reinstallation DVD. This is for Windows Vista Home Premium, 32-bit, which is what's on this PC. I'm assuming this is just a clean disk. This doesn't contain the Gateway factory image. This is a good thing to have. Finally, there's another box that contains those speakers, which are cute little things that are powered by USB. Actually, a really good thing to have. I really don't have that many pairs of speakers here and ones that can be powered over USB. Not sure how good they sound. I'll have to pull them out and experiment with them another day. And finally, the main attraction. So I have to admit, I've never actually gotten a brand new desktop computer really at all in my life, so figuring out how to take this thing out of the box was surprisingly difficult. It's packed pretty well, though the foam that was once new 18 years ago was quickly deteriorating when I actually tried to pull the thing out of the box, so it was a bit tricky. I also opened it upside down because I'm smart. There's a small dent on the bottom, which I'm guessing is just maybe a manufacturing issue, but otherwise, here you are. There was one other small scratch on the top that I don't think was my doing, but otherwise, it's freaking mint. Now, something else to note is that on this series of Gateway machines, they used soft touch rubber apparently, just like what they did on the EliteBook, but this time, this rubber is actually still intact. It's not deteriorated or sticky or anything. Who knows if that will change? But so far, it looks really good. It's certainly quite a big machine, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I also noticed, as soon as I took it out of the box, that the motherboard I/O layout is totally different from the one shown on the setup poster. Again, does it matter? No. But is it funny? Absolutely. It was a generic poster. Of course, it's not going to be completely accurate. In fact, the only real difference is this board has serial and parallel. We're also reminded of the specs, which are proudly displayed on the side of the PC with this big sticker. I also had to chuckle at the claim of film quality game effects. Play extreme games and view stunning graphics. Which is a a bold claim for a GeForce 8300 GS, but we'll try that out later. Regardless, this thing should actually have some pretty decent power to it. Also, in case you were wondering, the bag contains my dinner for tonight. Anyway, it kind of felt like a crime punishable by death to keep this brand new, clean computer on my horrible, disgusting carpet. So let's move this thing to my slightly less horrible, disgusting table. I definitely noticed this thing is going to be a fingerprint magnet. They were already beginning to build up on this brushed aluminum piece. Now, as much as I really wanted to just plug this thing in and start exploring it, there was something I wanted to check before I applied any power to it. I'm no stranger to the capacitor plague, and I've seen many PCs from 2006 or 2007 specifically that have had failing capacitors. And with this thing sitting in its box for so long, I had to check. It did mean I had to remove the quality seal on the back of the case, so getting any warranty repair done might be a little bit more difficult, but I'm sure it'll be fine. But anyway, yeah. As soon as I took the panel off, I noticed at least 3 capacitors that were leaking badly. and a couple more that were visibly bulging. No, not that kind of you know what? Never mind. Am I surprised? Not really, for the exact reasons I just described, but I was certainly disappointed, especially because the rest of this board is clean. This is the cleanest 18-year-old computer I've ever seen in my life. As much as I didn't want to really pull this thing apart, I had to check that power supply now that I had some proof that this thing had capacitor issues. It's a Delta Electronics unit, so I have a lot of trust in it. And while it looked okay at first, after a bit of extensive searching, yup, there were 2 blown suckers in this one as well. Again, am I surprised? No. What I'm about to say is a great example of do as I say, not as I do. If you ever have any bulging or leaking capacitors, you should replace them. But, to me, it's one thing to apply power to a motherboard with leaking or failing capacitors. It's an entirely different thing to apply power to a power supply with leaky or failing capacitors. I'm just not comfortable with applying power to this, unfortunately. So if I want to see if this thing's going to work, I'm going to have to pull out something else. And unfortunately, I don't really have any replacements here in my collection. So for the meantime, we're breaking out Old Faithful. This is a Newton power thing. It's a 250 watt power supply that's in my Gateway E4100 I recently covered. This is only a 20 pin power supply, but it should be enough to see if this thing works. It also doesn't fit in the case at all because of the external cooling fan, but to be honest, it's so dusty I don't even want to put it in this case anyway. Not in my clean computer. So, does it work? Well, kind of. It technically gets power, but it's not actually booting. The fan just runs at full speed and that's about it. No beep codes, the power light isn't on, nothing. In fact, the only way I can power it down is to just unplug the whole thing completely. Not a good start. Normally in a situation like this, I would start small, just trying a bunch of different things to see if anything would make it work. But in this case, we can bypass all of that and skip right to seeing what it does when I unplug the 4-pin CPU power connector. And the answer is the behavior is exactly the same. So whatever issue this board is having is clearly significant enough that it's not even getting that far in its post-process. Just to be safe, I tried a different power supply that's actually a 24-pin unit, this one coming out of a Dell Optiplex, which doesn't even fit that well. And not only is the behavior exactly the same, but I heard a strange hissing sound from this computer. That was not from my power supply. I checked later. So, yeah, that's bad. I played around with it some more, but the conclusion is the same. This thing's just not booting. Tragically, it seemed like my adventure was over before it had even begun. I only realized it after I took this apart more, just how bad these capacitors looked. There's at least 5 that are at least somewhat leaking, and the other 2 in this row are swelled. Could that be why it's not booting? Well, maybe. The problem is that I don't know how to solder, and I don't have any capacitors. Fortunately, I think I know a guy that does. My dad is a wizard when it comes to electronics, so obviously he knows how to solder. So maybe if he found the computer, he could fix it too? But that was gonna have to wait. It was gonna take time to get capacitors ordered here and just to find time to get a project like this done. I only realized how bad these capacitors were when I took this board out of the case. All of the caps that were failing, either leaky or were just beginning to swell, I don't want to use the other word now, they were all the exact same type of capacitor. This green cap manufactured by Sanyo. The rest of the caps on the board looked fine. There are 10 of these caps on this board, and I'm sure you'd be shocked to learn that of the 10 on this board, every single one of them was failing. There's that row of 7 that were all visibly failing. There's also 2 next to the PCI Express slot and 1 nearby the RAM. And all of these were either leaking or were swelling. So every single one of these capacitors was gonna have to be replaced. This was gonna be a tough job. Well, while I was waiting, and since I had it pulled apart anyway, I pulled the drives out of this thing. The hard drive is indeed 400 gigabytes, and it's made by WD. I honestly was expecting another one of those Seagate drives, but I guess WD also made 400 gigabyte drives. I guess the capacity is just more common than I thought it was. I don't know if I should even be plugging this in, but let's see if I can at least get AW tonight, even if the rest of this shit doesn't work. What the heck? Probably shouldn't be on the floor for this. The audio for this is probably going to be horrible. We have a recovery partition on the hard drive, which I expected because, well, it's never been used before. Why is this only... This is only formatted for up to 222 gigs. Why? What does disk manager on this thing looks like? Or, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I know my camera's not focused. Why is it like this? What is this? Oh my god. Talk about having a weird capacity hard drive. You can't even use it all out of the box. They've left 100 gigs of the drive unformatted. So what this is partitioned for a 250 gig drive. Weird. That's really weird. I'm not going to change that on my own. I wonder if this has like a post out-of-box experience script or something. Or if this is not even fully installed. Unless that's genuinely a mistake. But that's strange. I mean, if it doesn't fix it automatically, I can do that myself, but that's just weird. I've never seen that before. Maybe because I don't get very many brand new computers before, but like, geez. It's definitely brand new. 1 hour on the drive. Like, even the EliteBook 6930p had, like, I think more than that. I'd have to go back and check. It had more, at least one of these was like 90. So I guess that makes more sense. Maybe more rigorous testing. I don't know. But yeah, just really strange. Now I pulled out the DVD drive too, even though I didn't really care as much. It's just a DVD RW drive. It's made by PBDS, which is fun. The only real thing about it that I found interesting is that it's IDE, not SATA. Not like it matters, this board has IDE. Guessing it's a cost-saving measure. I plugged it into something and it got power and spun a disk, so it's probably good enough. So it took a long time to get this project done. As I expected, this was tough, especially desoldering the capacitors by the CPU. But we got there eventually. We found some equivalent spec capacitors that probably weren't going to fail and replaced every single one of them. The row of 7 next to the CPU, the 2 by the PCI Express slot, and that single one nearby the RAM. So, moments of truth, I guess. So I have to admit, I did plug this in before pulling the camera out, but I knew I was onto something straight away when I plugged power into it. Well, we got a beep code this time, so maybe if I put some RAM in it, it might work? Question mark? Yes. Yes, it did. I could not believe it when my monitor lit up. Holy cow. It makes sense if a lot of those capacitors weren't working properly for it to not boot. So now, the real moment of truth. It fires up like nothing was wrong at all. The only thing that was wrong was the date and time. I took out the CMOS battery and I just replaced it altogether since I had the board out, and I just kind of assumed that the 18-year-old one was probably going to be dead. So I just took care of that before it was even a problem. So now it's really time for that 2007 Windows Vista experience. This thing was slow to boot up, which I'm not surprised about, but it got there eventually. It didn't know what to do with my monitor's resolution. That's fine, I can deal with that later. And of course, it's gateway branded. There isn't actually really too much different with the out-of-box experience. It's mostly just Windows Vista stuff, other than agreeing to the gateway and user license agreement, which makes sense, though there were also some gateway backgrounds that you could select. And there was also a special offers section from Gateway. This is advertising AOL. Makes sense, they put that advertisement in the box already. And after waiting some more for Windows Vista to do its nonsense, we are finally at the desktop of this thing. Whew. What a journey. And we're not even finished yet. There's just something that feels incredibly special about setting up something this old for the first time. Sure, I've installed Windows Vista plenty of times, and I've even run system recovery partitions before and set up Windows Vista that way, but setting it up clean out of the box just hits different. What wasn't nearly as fun was trying to get this GPU situation figured out. Apparently, the driver does not allow for 1080p. Cool. So the first thing I had to check before I did anything was the partition on the drive after my findings from earlier. And yes, it did recorrect the partition, so it likely had some script or something there. So I don't have to worry about that. And yeah, everything's here. The system seems to work. I had it running for about 15 or 20 minutes at this point, and everything was fine. So before I did much more with the system, I wanted to plug it into my capture card for obvious reasons. At least that was my intention. After I plugged it in and started booting up the PC, something strange occurred. The gateway splash screen came up just fine, but as soon as it tried booting anything off the hard drive, the system turned off without my input. And this kept happening. As soon as it would really try to do anything with the Windows install again, it was just hard shutting down. I thought once again it was a situation of my 20-pin Basel power supply just not cutting the mustard here. But even after connecting a different power supply, it still just wasn't working. The system would turn on, and as soon as it would actually try and boot anything, it would shut down. And now I have a rat's nest attached to it. It just didn't make sense to me. The voltages seemed fine. It wasn't overheating or anything. I was completely stumped. So the next thing I decided to try was to just boot memtest86, not because I thought the RAM was bad, but to give it something else to just do instead of trying to boot into Windows. And it was fine. It did an entire pass with no errors, and it even booted Hiren's boot CD without any issue. So I decided to restart it again, and then it booted up just fine. I don't understand this thing. Well, in case it didn't boot up again, I decided to take a bit of a look through this Windows install, see what it had to offer. We have Adobe Reader 8, because of course. It's also got AOL, which feels obvious after all the advertisements so far. This has various Microsoft software on it, like Microsoft Money. as well as Microsoft Works 8.5. It's also got another classic, Napster. It has a shortcut for Net Zero Internet, another dial-up option, which isn't installed out of the box, but of course I installed it because I'm me. A web link to amdlive.com, which I'm sure is definitely still active. A shortcut to broadband service from Exceller, a company I have never heard of before, but it's branded as Gateway Connect. There's also BigFix, which I've seen on various Gateway and eMachines PCs at this point. A copy of Cyberlink Power to Go version 5. Again, another pretty obvious one to have some kind of optical disc solution on here. This is a PDF file of the user guide, as well as another PDF for the hardware reference. It has Gateway Games powered by Wild Tangent. Good. Maybe that's where the film quality game effects come from. There is the Gateway Recovery Center, again, another obvious one. This has a recovery partition on it after all. It has Google Desktop, McAfee Security Center, which has already been popping up things, the aforementioned copy of Microsoft Office Home and Student 2007, or more specifically a trial version of it. I'll probably install a better version of this later. And finally, Spare Backup, which seems pretty self-explanatory. Whew, yeah, there is a lot of stuff built into this Windows install, but, I mean, it was also advertised on the box, so I'm not surprised. I tried plugging this thing into DVI to see if I would have any more luck in getting this thing to output a real resolution, and the answer is nope. So it was SDI time to update the drivers on this thing. Obviously, they're all OEM drivers, yes, but they're also from 2007, and I figured we could do better. And thankfully, that did the trick. Next, it was the usual Windows Update experience, which, as you would expect for Windows Vista RTM, was nothing other than a complete and total pain in the butt. In addition to getting the brand new 2007 computer experience, I'm also getting the Windows Vista experience. This Windows install has been nothing short of a complete pain in the NEC at trying to do pretty much anything with it. It's just been extremely problematic at trying to get it up to date, and even then it's been slow and I've had several issues with it. So pretty much the usual Vista quirks. But anyway, it's been a couple days since this piece of footage was recorded, and I've been using this on and off. And while I want to keep it as stock as I can, there were two changes that I made to it. You may have noticed at some points in this video that there has been a second hard drive installed. I ended up installing that other 400GB hard drive that I had shown earlier in the video. Mostly because I just had this drive around, I didn't really have a use for it, and I plan on actually using this computer, so I thought having some more disk space would be convenient. And I even found a SATA cable that's basically identical to the one shipped in this computer. And secondly, as interesting as this Windows Vista install was, I ended up upgrading this computer to Windows 7. It's still got all the gateway stuff and everything, it's just Windows Vista was being so difficult on this thing, as I've come to expect over the years of doing this. This did require me to get rid of McAfee Security Center. You may now take all of the time you need to grieve. It just felt like the right choice to me. It was gonna make it a lot more usable, and it's not like Windows 7 is visually that different from Windows Vista, and it was gonna have proper driver support and everything. And while it's still not perfect, because it's physically impossible to, it's better, and at least there's better software support on this machine as well. So what can this computer do? Well, when this Windows install isn't being completely difficult, this thing's certainly pretty quick. Obviously, it's not SSD levels of quick, but for a mechanical hard drive, it's really not that bad, even after several days of installing updates once again and installing more programs and just setting the machine up. Since I started using this machine, I've clocked around 60 hours on it over several days. Obviously, I'm going to cover this machine at some point on the channel, so if you want more in-depth information, I'm going to save it for that, because this video is already long enough as is. But I'll give you some sneak peeks. Mainly the thermals, which I will admit, I was a little bit concerned about when I actually looked at that cooler because it's not that big. And I noticed that pretty much within minutes of turning it on, the CPU fan was having to spin up a lot to keep this thing cool. The thermals aren't impressive, at least according to Hardware Monitor. The BIOS was reporting close to an idle temperature of 45 degrees. In a Windows install, it was a lot closer to 60 degrees. The good news is that it doesn't get a whole lot higher than that. The CPU seemed to max out at about 70. Not really great, but not in any dangerous territory. That GPU ran hotter, closer to 80 degrees. I feel like that's just kind of expected with such a teeny tiny little cooler. Thankfully it's got a fan, but still. I mean, how else is this thing going to have... Sorry, I need to go back and check. Film quality game effects, after all. Despite all of the advertising on the side, my expectations for this card were pretty low. It's still better than integrated, absolutely. But it's an 8300 GS. That thing was lagging just trying to run Windows Aero at times. So, can it game? Well, yeah, pretty much. I tried a handful of games from the mid-2000s just to see what would happen. Some of the usual suspects and a couple new ones just to have some variety. Again, doesn't really show much of this thing's ability. I kind of want to experiment with this more on my own time, but yeah, it can run games reasonably and at higher settings, not maxed out or anything. Yeah, games are playable on this thing, so I'll eat my words a little bit. It's still not a completely perfect experience, but come on. This is obviously good enough. It's clear that this thing at least has some power in it. I find it similar to my E4100. That has a pretty good CPU and a smaller-ish GPU to at least give it some graphics power. I'll take it. So, that leads us to today. It's been almost a month since I've got this computer. A lot happened with this. It was a lot bigger video than I was expecting. But as of recording right now, the computer is still working with, well, some issues. But so far it's working. I don't know if that's going to change after it's been a couple months or something, and I'm gonna use this a bit more once this video is done. I want to set this up. I really want to break this system in, and I'm just curious how this thing is going to do. We'll see if any more capacitors will fail at some point in the future. I'm not sure. Of course, it ain't done. There are still issues with this machine that I don't know if I can resolve. The motherboard is still having that issue where it just doesn't want to boot into an operating system all of the time. What I've noticed is that this really only happens when the system has been without power for an extended period of time. And once the system is warmed up, either by sitting in the BIOS or running memtest or something, it seems to work just fine after that. That's how I was able to set this machine up. I'm not really an expert on that kind of stuff. I already made that clear earlier. But if I had to take a crack at it, I'd say maybe it's a side effect of the replacement capacitors. Maybe there's another component on this board that has some kind of issue. This behavior still occurs on the 3 power supplies that I've used in this video, and all of them work with little issues. I've at least never seen this exact problem occur on anything else before. So it seems to be pretty clear that it's likely a motherboard issue, and one that I really don't know how to solve, but it seems like if you just put some heat into the board, it seems to work fine after that. So, I don't know. We'll see if that changes. I am far more equipped to do something about the power supply. I still don't have one as of recording this video. I just don't really know what's going to happen to this thing yet. For all I know, this power supply might work fine, but I'm not comfortable in trying it. And seeing how difficult it was to get just the board done, it seems like this power supply is going to be even trickier. So, as much as I would like to use it, what's probably going to happen in the meantime is I'm going to sideline it and try and just find an identical model that doesn't look too gross but actually works. That's at least a pretty easy fix. This thing is completely standard, which I appreciate. So outside of power related problems, the only other thing I've noticed other than the Windows install is the bearings on the CPU fan do not sound good. I'm guessing it's another age related thing, and it doesn't happen all the time either. It's only when the fan hits a certain speed, not max, but somewhere in the middle, where the bearings on this thing just sound awful. But that's something that doesn't happen nearly as often. It's just something I've noticed. So, is it perfect? Hell no. But is it awesome? Hell yeah. This thing, it's a sweet machine. It certainly helps that, ignoring the backstory of this machine, it's actually a computer that has some decent potential to it. It's not something low end that realistically I'm never going to use. I will actually use this thing. This, I think, is going to be a pretty decent little mid to late 2000s machine. I really like my Gateway E4100, so this really feels like the next step. I'm not really planning on upgrading a lot of the parts right now. I want to leave them all stock, at least for the time being. But I do have some plans for the hardware config to make this thing better. I might add some more expansion cards, and I might put a second DVD drive in, and I've already put a second hard drive in. So little things like that. But I'm going to save that for another day. It may be a flawed little machine. Well, no, it's not little at all. It may be a flawed big machine. But damn, this is a pretty awesome big flawed machine.